we go with the ones our readers are most concerned about, so I know you'll be absolutely shocked beyond belief to find that the first question is about education. And since we're getting fewer questions in, we're going to combine a couple of these. So and I'm sure nobody's ever asked you this before, but whether you believe the Shawnee Mission School District is underfunded and how you would fix that funding formula. If you believe the funding formula that the state uses now is wrong, what would be your prescription for fixing it? And please include, because you won't get a separate question, your view on local option budget and how this fits in this question. Okay, and we're going to start with you.
I do believe the Shawnee Mission School District is underfunded, as well as the rest of the schools in the state of Kansas, and the Supreme Court of Kansas agrees. The legislature was mandated to put more money into schools, which that has never really come to fruition. I don't believe at this point that we need to make major changes to the school formula. We simply need to put the adequate amount of money, the mandated amount of money, back into our school formula, or our school system. The local option budget is extremely popular in Johnson County. I do believe that that is one factor that we need to look at as an option. However, I don't think that we need the local option if we can work with the current school formula and fully fund our schools. Although I don't know that that's going to be accomplishable in this legislation, but we do need to, so the local option budget is something that we drastically need to look at. I know as somebody who is on the city level, a local option budget is going to be very hard for some of our residents, so I don't think that that's the first place we need to look. I think we actually need to look at repealing Governor Brownback's income tax reductions first, because we did end the fiscal year with a $466 million surplus that would have been an adequate amount of money to refund the schools with. So our economy is growing. This is just, the local option budget is not our first source of income revenue. We need to look at repealing Brownback's income tax reductions.
Thank you. Clearly, Shawnee Mission, being in the bottom 10% of funding in the state, is not receiving enough to sufficiently educate our kids. I've been working on this issue for the last 5 years, advocating for better funding mechanisms overall. The current formula, even at a state of full funding, would not equitably distribute funds around the state because of the various weightings that are built into it and the loopholes that the weightings allow. There's a gaming of the system in certain specific areas. So there are a number of options that we can pursue. They're all going to be difficult, but we need to fight for either some changes to the existing formula so that we close some of those loopholes and we more equitably distribute our funds, so that, one example is ELL. The weighting is based on the number of certified teachers receiving that certification, not the number of students receiving the ELL. So there's a loophole. If you want to game the system, you get all your teachers certified and you get more funding. The formula punishes Shawnee Mission because we are a shrinking enrollment district. And so we need to make changes. We need to, probably the better route would be what was attempted last year, which is to effect wholesale change to the formula. And we as PTA, we're advocating for that. We certainly need to fund our schools at the statutory levels and conform to our constitutional obligation, but I think that all options need to be on the table. And LOB is an important feature for Shawnee Mission. We certainly should work to increase that option for our schools to enhance state funding, but it should never replace what the state is funding our schools with.
Surprise, I agree. I think we all agree. Having served on the Education Committee for the last 3 years, I have watched firsthand the challenge of having an underfunded school system, Shawnee Mission, which I represent, and the push from rural and western Kansas to have their schools funded at the level that they want. Each one of us will have a vote saying, I want my school to remain either better or unchanged. and that makes it difficult to get anything passed ever to change any of the formula. Last year, Governor Brownback eventually got legislation forward to the committee that included some changes to the formula. However, it was too late. I mean, you can't start something in a committee system 3 or 4 weeks into the process. So that was actually very disappointing to me because he ran saying he would work on changing the funding formula, and surprise, it didn't happen. I would personally like to see that happen. Agree with both Melissa and Megan that we need to see changes in the overall formula. Melissa talked about the English language learners. I would add in the way we classify at-risk students. Currently, we do that by anyone who is on free and reduced lunch. Well, as you look at the present economy, and people's incomes may suddenly have diminished to nothing for a year, suddenly that child is on free and reduced lunch potentially, and that doesn't make them at risk, so never enough time. Bottom line is we probably will need to look at local option budget or local activity budget options, but getting something passed will be challenging. I will be fighting to get something passed.
No, I don't have to agree.
No, do this.
Thank you. Well, I believe that the debate about the school funding formula is important and has been very important. But right now, I'm very concerned about whether or not the money is going to be there to hand out to the schools in the first place. I am very concerned that no matter what we do to try to bring our tax dollars back to Johnson County and to weight it more fairly, that we are still going to see a reduction in the base state aid that our students receive in this community. And I really think we need to focus on seeing where those tax dollars are going to come in and make sure that we are going to get the schools the money that they needed. I don't believe that the Shawnee Mission School District is underfunded. I know it is. It is very challenging for the teachers, and it's not fair to our students. I would definitely like to see something done with the local option budget, but what that is, whether it needs to have the cap completely blown off because we're going to have to make up for no adequate funding from the state, or if it's going to just be what it should be, which is the little extra oomph that gives our schools what makes them great. And so I would really like to see the funding issue being the first thing that is tackled, and then we'll have to go from there. But I'm very concerned about the actual money being in the state for our schools.
Okay. Our Shawnee Mission School District, is it underfunded? Yes. Based on the Montoy case from 2005, the base student aid per pupil should be at somewhere around $4,500 right now. Or actually, it's in 2005. Right now, it's at $3,800 change. So based upon that, yes, the schools are underfunded. Fixing the formula. That's going to be an interesting process, because you have this difference between the Western Kansas schools, and not just the Western Kansas schools, but the frontier schools or the rural schools, and then the urban schools like Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley. Now, I was having this discussion the other day with a member of Game On, which is a local kind of PTA type of organization that fights for education. I believe Melissa is on that.
It's not affiliated.
They're not affiliated, but it's basically a local advocacy group. And I was having a discussion with an individual about how we would change that formula. Now, without getting into specifics about the ELL or free and reduced lunches, I think really the process has to be that everybody involved needs to sit down, check their egos at the door, and work to a solution. That means teachers, that means advocates like the PTA and Game On, it also means legislators, and it also means the parents. We have to figure out a system that works statewide, not just for Shawnee Mission and not just for the rural school districts. I've taught in rural school districts. They see this as, Shawnee Mission has these palaces where you go in and you need a Starbucks and you have these big gleaming cities that you can teach in. And they're worried about their communities dying. So that's a real concern. Now, as for the LOB, yes, I think we should be increasing the LOB. Local control of how you spend your money is key. The question becomes, when you reach that point where, equalization needs to kick in, how can we still create a quality school system for the entire state of Kansas while allowing Shawnee Mission to control its budget?
Well, gosh, I would say at this point, by the time we get this far down the line, so many of the things that I say will be redundant. I'm also involved with Game On, and I'm very familiar with a lot of the arguments that they make. I've been an advocate for schools for a number of years. As a parent of an elementary student at a school that is most likely to close and combine with other schools, I've noticed this concern firsthand with a lot of the concerns that we have with increasing class sizes and the concerns that go with that regarding possible declines with student performance. One thing that I can say about the Shawnee Mission District is that we tend to succeed, and we tend to succeed in spite of what is going on, what is handed to us from the state level. This is not a because of. And we notice a lot of these little cuts, and we parents tend to make do. I know a lot of other parents in the elementary schools in my district have brought in cleaning supplies, for instance, due to the fact that we now have our classrooms only cleaned once every 3 days. Little things that we do to make things better at our level. Now, regarding how I would work at the state if elected, I do believe that we are not currently funding the formula to the degree that we should be, and I think that that should be increased. I do believe, and this is because of so much that I have heard, this is the top concern that I have heard at the door while walking around visiting neighbors this summer, and that is an increase in the amount of local control. I think one of our top concerns is, at what point do we put that cap on? Do we put it on at all? And again, do we want to make sure that this is being equalized at the state level? So it will be a great deal of consensus that is worked towards, and I'm already working with people who I know will be in the legislature to start those conversations.